Welcome, everybody. Welcome those that are here with us in person and those with us that are joining us live on Facebook to an informational session and hopefully just a conversation about the upcoming bond. I have some people with me here tonight on the panel. I would like to introduce Board President Courtney Wilson, who's with us tonight, as well as Associate Superintendent for Facilities and Bonds, Mr. Jeff Brogdon. So what we want to do tonight is start off by giving you guys just some general information about the bond, and then we would love to engage with, again, those in the audience and those online, and just some questions, and maybe be able to share as much information as we can about the upcoming bond. So to get us started, as you know, at the January 26th board meeting, our board voted 7-0 to call for a bond election on May 4th. That bond is for $777 million, and I know you kind of go, oh wow, that might be a little sticker shock, but for a little bit of perspective, back when we built Lake Ridge, we built it for $61 million, and today that building would have to be built for over $300 million, right? So when we think about the amount, but we do want to walk you through what all makes up that $777 million, and we know that we can also do that with no tax rate increase for our voters should they pass, and we're also going to walk you through how that's actually possible. But to get us going, let's hear from some of our students exactly what's going on with the bond election.
Hi, my name is Cadence, and I'm a 4th grade student in Mansfield. This May, Mansfield ISD will ask community members to vote on a bond broken up into 5 ballot propositions. These include fixing up existing schools and facilities, upgrading safety and security, replacing old parts of our district, and providing additional opportunities for us students through expanded academic and athletic programs and spaces. School districts in Texas receive funds that cover daily operations, like paying teachers and making sure we have electricity to learn. Projects like constructions, fixing older buildings, or buying new technology aren't always covered in the budget. That's where school bonds come in. But what is a bond?
School bond? I don't know what that is.
I don't know. Obviously, I forgot.
I don't know what a school bond is. Your school bond is like you're friends with the school.
I don't know. I don't really know, but I think it's where like 2 schools are like, I would say friends and like help each other.
What? I think school bonds pay for our Chromebooks. I don't really know what a school bond is. Actually, I have no idea. What is it?
Okay, I'll try to explain it. A bond is when a school needs money to take these big improvements, so they borrow it with the promise to pay it back over time. Kind of like borrowing money from a friend and paying it back. To start off, a large group of Mansfield moms and dads, grandparents, neighbors, teachers, and leaders meant a whole lot to figure out what our schools needed and what we could really afford without increasing our community's tax rate. They looked at data, listened to experts, asked so many questions, and then decided what was the most important to be in the bond. As a committee, they decided that we would focus on 5 main things: equipping and renovating schools and facilities, building a brand new school for our youngest students, purchasing instructional technology, stadium renovations, fine arts additions in addition to our max, and all without an increase to the tax rate. All of our amazing school board members agreed with the committee members and called for a vote on the bond. Of course, there's so much more to get into, and you have an exciting presentation coming next, but I want to remind you to go vote on May 4th.
What an incredible young lady. We have amazing, incredible kids in Mansfield ISD, and that is just a smidgen of our students, and they're incredible. So she said we have an exciting presentation, so I'm going to try to make this as exciting as possible because she really raised the bar there for me. But here's what I'm going to tell you. We are talking about 5 different propositions. You can see them up here. This is what's on the May ballot. You may be asking, well, why 5? Back in the day, you could throw everything onto one proposition. State law changed that. There are certain things that have to be separated out into different propositions. If it's in any sort of movable technology, and we'll talk about that when we get to Prop B with instructional technology, if you can pick it up and move it, it has to be separated out. If it's any sort of a stadium, and that is identified as anything with 1,000 seats or more, it needs to be separated out. So we'll kind of talk about those things as we go through and we look. But you can see where I'm actually going to take you through each one of the propositions. You can also already look and see that Proposition A has the largest dollar amount attached to it, but also has the majority of the meat as far as the 2024 bond goes. So let's walk through what those are. But again, the total is for $777 million, and all that can be done with no tax rate increase for the voters. So a little bit about Proposition A. So Proposition A, the very first part, deals with district-wide life cycle replacements. Just like at home, your refrigerator, your dishwasher, all those things, mine just went out. Oops, sorry. Those things are going to go out, right? Things reach the end of their life cycle. That's where we are with things throughout the district, and so it is time for those types of replacements for us. We're looking at HVAC, roofing, plumbing, electrical, flooring, lighting, all of those things that have reached their end of their life cycle, and that could happen immediately. There are some things that are up, and there might be some things that are going to be at the end of their life cycle in 2 years and 3 years, and so this bond would cover those life cycle replacements as we move along. Also within Proposition A is technology infrastructure. I mentioned a different type of technology, that kind that's portable and movable. This is not what I'm talking about in Prop A. This stays in Prop A because it's the infrastructure. So we're talking about anything like battery backups, phones, network cabling. And then I also want to go down and talk specifically about the network fiber ring for resiliency. If you kind of think about a bicycle wheel and the spokes on the wheel, right now, all throughout Mansfield ISD, all the time, there's so much growth. There's a lot of construction that's going on, right? So if you think of our schools and you take the wheel and the rim off, schools are located along those spokes. And if a fiber ring, if there's construction going on, and it's by accident, but it gets cut, if the fiber wire gets cut, those on that ring, on that spoke, lose connectivity, right? What this would be a ring that would actually, you put that tire around and it goes all the way around the district. So if something gets cut in the middle, it reroutes and we don't lose connectivity. That way, instruction continues, right? Technology continues, safety, we're able to continue with safety, right, using our Raptor systems, all of that. So all of those things don't stop while we have to wait and do end arounds and wait on those repairs. So that's what that is, and that's also in Prop A. Also in Prop A is safety and security. So when you look at that, we're talking about equipment upgrades and replacement, cameras, access points. Right now, we have older cameras, and they pan. And so you see about this much, and then it pans to here, and then it pans to here. And if something happens over here while it's panned over here, we're not going to catch it. With these newer cameras, they have a much wider range, so we can see all of this at the same time, right? So some of those upgrades, also some fire sprinklers, additional weapons detection systems. If y'all remember, just this past year, we rolled out AI technology with Evolved technology. It's AI, and it is a weapons detection. It's not a metal detector. With metal detectors, you walk through, and it buzzes, and then you go over to the side, and we search, you have to search it, like I think about at the airport. They have to search everything, and they go through your bag trying to find whatever set the buzzer off. What Evolved technology is when, as students come and walk through the building, they walk through, and if there's something that's detected on them, the camera's immediately going to take a picture of their face, so whoever, or the people that are working the system, immediately know which student it is. And then it also puts a box around the area of concern. So if I was carrying something right here, it's going to take a picture of my face, and it's going to put a red box around this area. We know exactly where to go to search, and we can do these things much more efficiently, right, and get our kiddos in the building. So we implemented that at all of our high schools this year. And this would take the Evolved technology, and this would put it at all of our middle schools, right? So all of our middle schools, and also allow us to add that to stadiums for security as well. Another part of this is a safety operations center in MISTA Police Station. We've had our own police department since 1993. We're very, very blessed in that way. And as of 2017, we began putting an officer on every campus. Since then, we have grown tremendously, not only with our police department, but with our safety teams, right? So we have a huge increase and focus on safety. With that, we've grown those teams. Our police department has been housed in the same building back behind what used to be Mansfield High School that is now Wester, in the building that used to be Ben Barber that is now the police department and technology, right? They've been back there for a couple of decades. And so what we're looking at now is the police department and safety need to expand and be together in one space. And then our technology department needs the opportunity to expand and grow because they've grown tremendously too, and they're officing on kind of on top of each other. So that's what that would do as well. That's in Prop A. We're still in Prop A because, like I said, this is the big one. The next one is transportation. We need to purchase purchase replacement buses. Right now, we have over 100 buses that are ending their life cycle at some point very quickly, some immediately, some in the next couple of years. So we need to purchase about 100 buses. We talked a little bit ago about inflation. So about 5 years ago, a school bus was $100,000. Today, one school bus is $168,000. And we're going to need to be purchasing 100 of those, right? And so that's in Prop A, as well as renovations to 6th Avenue and to the bays, and renovations at our Main Street facility as well, again, to assist us in being able to repair those buses and get them on the street. We want our kids to get to and from school and events safely. Also in Prop A is expanding student opportunities for fine arts. So at Howard, Western, and Worley, those are our 3 oldest middle schools. And they are hosting choir in a much smaller room. The buildings are older, one that's not really robust enough for the choir programs that we have today. So this will allow us to renovate the choir rooms at those 3 middle schools and give them a choir room that's up to par with our other middle schools. Additionally, we would be adding orchestra space at our middle schools, at all of our middle schools. Our orchestra program is growing, and we have a lot of demand for orchestra. This will enable us to have that space in place for our kids so we can continue to grow that program and meet that demand. Also in Prop A is expanding CTE opportunities for our students. Last year, believe it or not, we had to turn away over 1,000 kids for CTE opportunities because we didn't have the space to develop the programs to put in that space to meet that demand. So what this is going to do academically for our kids is allow us to have extra space that we can then add additional programs and expand our programs to meet that demand so we don't have to turn kids away when they want those CTE opportunities. And that's so much a part of our college and career and life readiness and our 2030 strategic plan. We also need to do some classroom conversions and high-tech computer labs at Ben Barber, just adding some of those and enhancing those. Also a part of Prop A is expanding student opportunities in athletics. We need to resurface and add lights to our high school tennis courts. As long as we've had tennis in Mansfield ISD, which has been a really long time, we've never had lit tennis courts at the high schools, right? And so all around us, the high schools have lit tennis courts. So when the sun goes down here, tennis stops. They continue to practice and play. So we would be adding those to our high school tennis courts. We need to resurface our middle school tracks. The committee that looked together and put together a lot of this recommendation looked at photographs. And I mean, when you have a crack in a track, right, runners need to be really careful. So we want to make sure that when our students are out there, our athletes are out there, or even our community is out there, utilizing our tracks at the middle schools, that they're safe places to walk and run. We want to build covered batting cages at the high schools for our students. We have a lot of rain and inclement weather. We live in Texas, right? What's going on outside right now, even for those of you that are at home, you know what's going on outside. We have inclement weather. We want to be able to install turf at baseball and softball fields. Again, when it rains heavily, and of course baseball and track take place in the spring, that's when it rains and rains and rains and rains and rains. On turf fields, students can rest for a minute, maybe about 15 minutes, and get right back out there and play. For us, we may have to stay off that for a couple of days till it dries out. So around us, the surrounding districts, those kids continue to play, our kids don't. And then middle school practice fields. So we need to renovate weight rooms and replace bleachers and things like that at our middle school scoreboards. Also in Prop A, Early Learners Academy. This would be a new construction. We currently have the Dr. Sarah K. Jandruko Early Learners Academy. And what this would do would us be able to expand that experience and pre-K environment for more students in our district. Several years ago, the state of Texas did make all school districts go from half-day pre-K to full-day pre-K, and we did that in phases over a couple of years. We saved Jandruko for the very last because that's such a experiential learning environment, such a rich environment for our learners that we just had a real hard time reducing the number of kids that could experience that. But we finally did have to go to full day at that, and that reduced by half the number of kids that we could serve in that environment. So this would kind of get us back up to speed with where we were before and having our students there all day. It does serve 3s and 4s. The 3s are our special education students. Our early childhood special education students would be served in this building, just like at Jandruko. And then our traditional pre-K kids, our 4s, right? So we know that it's an interactive, engaging learning experience. And when we decided to go and move forward with Jandruko, we did a huge amount of research, and we knew what the research said. We knew it said that if this is the type of environment that kids are learning in, this experiential hands-on learning environment, that they're going to learn at quicker rates, right? That literacy and that math and numeracy, all that's going to increase much more quickly. But we didn't just want to go on the research after we built Jandruko. We used that to build it, but then we wanted to study our own right, our own design. And so we have been tracking those kiddos, and here's what we now know. We did have a little break in the research because of COVID, right? But now we're back, and now we have some research. And here's what we know when you look at this. What you're looking at here, the dark blue bars, those are the students that attended Jan Druco. Now this is how they performed in kindergarten based on our local assessments, right? So the gray is students who had a different pre-K experience. That could be pre-K in another district. That could be pre-K at a church pre-K, that could be pre-K at whatever pre-K they experienced outside of Mansfield ISD. It could have been our other traditional pre-Ks back at the other campuses, or it could be that they didn't attend pre-K at all, right? But when you take those kiddos and then you bump them up against the kiddos that in kindergarten who went to Jan Druco, you can see that the students that attended Jan Druco are far outperforming. So we know that we're setting those kids up to be college, career, and life ready. Our number one goal in Mansfield ISD is that students will read on level by the beginning of third grade and remain on level. And the literacy-rich environment that they're exposed to at Jan Druco, it's hard to beat. So this will allow this. If this were to pass, we would build another Early Learners Academy. So that's Proposition A. There's a lot in there, but let's talk for a minute about the ballot language. So what are you going to see on the ballot? What you're going to see, and what I want to point out is the very last sentence, and we have to put it on the ballot. We're required by state law now. And I think that was in 2019. We have to put this on the ballot, whether it's going to be a tax increase for our voters or not. And we have to put it in all caps. And it says this is a property tax increase. So when voters go in, this is what they're going to see. However, we know, because of the fiscal responsibility of not only our school board, but of our business and finance department, we can actually do a $777 million bond and not increase the tax rate for voters. But that language is required to be on there. So let's go to Prop B. Prop B, again, this is instructional technology. You can pick it up, you can move it. So one of the things we're talking about is interactive panels, those smart boards, right? So it's time to do some replacement in libraries, conference rooms, and classrooms. And again, because it's portable, they consider it that it has to go into a separate prop. And then some digital signage as well. So it's those digital boards that kind of scroll through and give you the news. So it's time to replace those and get those updated at our campuses so we can keep our parents, kids, and communities continually informed. So that is Prop B. And again, it has to be separated out for that very reason. So again, let's look at that ballot language. There it is again. And I'm showing you the ballot language over and over. Number one, to drive home the ballot language, but also number two, when voters go in to vote, they have to vote on each proposition separately. You can't vote them all up, you can't vote them all down. So you'll make a decision about each one of these. So this language will be seen 5 different times, right? So again, it says it's a property tax increase, but we know, again, the Mansfield ISD's tax rate will not increase as a result of this passing. And we're going to talk about how we're able to do that here in a minute. Proposition C, stadium renovations. So a stadium is defined as anything that has 1,000 seats or more, right? So when you look on here, the first thing is R.L. Anderson Stadium renovations. This is our traditional high school, right? Our traditional stadium that's been with us for a long time, and it is time for there to be some upgrades. There have been some upgrades along the way, but we haven't had a big overhaul of it in quite some time. And so new bleachers, locker rooms, press box, home concessions, it's time to replace the turf at RLA and parking lot lighting for safety. It will maintain that classic old school feel, but it will be renovated and better for our kids to play and perform in, and a better experience for our community. Newsom Stadium, it's actually time to do some safety and security upgrades there, and then field drainage and turf replacement are actually due at Vernon Newsom as well, so this would be on there. And then our high school practice fields, they do have more than 1,000 seats, and so it must be separated out into a separate proposition, so we put it here in Prop C. It's time to resurface those tracks, again, that we talked about, and then turf and scoreboard life cycle replacements at those. So Prop C, again, there's the ballot language, and again, we know we can do it and not increase the tax rate. Proposition D, these are fine arts additions and phase 2 of our max. So the fine arts multi-purpose edition, this would be a new build attached to, and it would serve our band, cheer, drill team, junior ROTC. When you think about it, having a dedicated space for those kids makes sense. If you drive by a high school campus right a couple weeks before school starts, who do you see outside? You see the band, right? You see the band out there on that hot pavement really, really early in the morning before it gets really, really, really hot. That's the space and place that they have, and they have to come in really early because it's so hot in August when they're coming back and gearing up for marching season. Same thing with our drill teams. If you were to walk through a high school campus, and I'm in a whole old high school AP where our drill team's practicing, in the cafeteria with whatever flooring might be present in that building, right? And so this is a dedicated space for them. If that is built, then we'll be able to renovate an existing band hall for orchestra. We have, again, a high demand for our orchestra program. Right now, all of our students for orchestra, they get on a bus and they go over to Ben Barber. This will enable us to push this back to the home campus and continue to increase that program and meet that demand for our kids. Next is phase 2 of the multipurpose athletic complex, our MAX. So in our last bond, we finished out the bottom floor, knowing that coming for a bond down the road would be the finishing out of that second floor of the MAX. This is the completion of phase 2 of those MAX, locker rooms, showers, offices, and storage. So that is also, and that is a part of Prop D. And then finally, we have, ballot language again. There it is. We know we can do it and not increase the tax rate for our voters. And then finally, I'd like to talk to you about Proposition E. This is phase 3 of the MAX, and this is what is often referred to as an indoor practice field. If you go to Arlington ISD, you're going to see these. If you go the other direction, you go to Burleson ISD, you're going to see these. We do not have these in Mansfield ISD. So this would be a 50-yard indoor practice field with an end zone at all of our high schools. Again, we talked a little bit about inclement weather for our kiddos and practicing. When you see all the kids that are scrolling through the pictures here, there's so many groups, and we have them listed on here, that we know could and should benefit from a facility like this. It'll enable them to continue to practice and play and march off part of either their drill team or march off part of what the band's doing. Soccer can be in there. Lots of different things. Our cheer, lots can be in there and take advantage of that space. Summer strength and conditioning as well. And so this would just be a space for our kiddos to provide great opportunities for them, particularly during inclement weather, but also in just sharing it throughout. So that's Prop E. And what we see in the ballot again, you're going to see that ballot language again in all caps. And again, we know we can do it and not increase the tax rate for our voters. So how are we able to do that? This is just a slide of accolades from Michelle Trongard in her office. She's sitting right here. But we have an incredible business and finance department, and we have an incredible board, and they've been very fiscally responsible. And these are just listings of some of the national and state awards that they win with regularity, right, for that fiscal responsibility, very conservative with our money. But another way, how are we able to do that? Well, just like homeowners, I mean, what's one of the ways that they always say, well, if you want to decrease your debt sooner, what are some ways that you can do as a homeowner? I don't know. I did not go pay cash for my home. I don't know if y'all did, but we did take out a mortgage, right? And so how do I pay that off faster? Well, what do they say? Well, make an extra payment. If you make one extra payment a year, you're gonna kick that debt down much, much faster, right? What's another way you can save money? You can refinance, right? Do a refinance. So our business office does a really good job of watching for those opportunities, and you can see in bond refunding since 2010, we've saved over almost $151 million. And then redemptions, paying down our debt earlier, making like that extra payment that we talked about, has saved close to $39 million. And then just like, again, for us as community members, we have Equifax or TransUnion, and they tell you what your credit rating is, and the higher your credit rating, the better off you're able to go out, right, and get loans and all those sorts of things. Our bond ratings, you can see, speak for themselves. That's our TransUnion, that's our Equifax, that's our bond ratings, and they're A+, so really, really good there. So good job, Ms. Trongard. So great financial management. Let's talk a little bit, though, about school finance, right? School finance is really different than a lot of systems, and we're really talking about two buckets. We're talking about the maintenance and operations bucket. That's our day-to-day. That's where our salaries and all of our people are. And we're in the people business. So about 85% of the M&O budget that you're seeing in this bucket over here is in our people. It's in our people and salaries. And then the remaining 50% is for utilities and supplies and repairs. So that's our M&O budget. The bucket that we're talking about is this bucket over here, the interest and sinking. This is for your bonds. And right now, our M&O is at 0.78, and our INS is at 0.36. Our M&O budget, that's impacted by the state, right? The INS budget, that's impacted by Mansfield ISD, that sets that 36-cent tax rate. So that 36-cent tax rate is what we're talking about when we're talking about bonds, and we have a lot of capacity that we won't have to raise that 36-cent tax rate in order to do this bond. Something that's interesting, too, is interest and sinking, the bucket doesn't cross, right? So the buckets stay true to what the buckets are. All right, so if you look at these two buckets, again, I said it's 0.7892 on M&O, and then we take our 36 cents on our INS, and that goes to our total tax rate of 1.1492 per $100 of property value. This is a little bit of our tax rate history, and you can look and you can see that the dark blue is our M&O and the light blue is the INS. The INS, again, is the money and the bucket that we're talking about when we're talking about passing a bond. So when we look at that, you can see right now that the total tax rate is 31 cents lower than it was 4 years ago. So well, an interesting note, this is the lowest the tax rate has been since 1992, right? So interesting note there. But let's look a little bit at bond capacity. So for voters to know, that blue line across the top, that is that 36 cents in that INS bucket. If you look at the dark blue, you see that's our existing bond debt from prior bonds, right? And it's continuing to go down. When you look at the light blue, that would be, if the bond were to pass, that is what the debt would look like with that bond on top of it. You can see that it continues to stay below that 36 cents because of the paying the bonds down and making extra payments and refinancing and all of that. That's allowed that capacity under that 36 cents, which allowed us to go out and go for $777 million and not have to raise that 36-cent tax rate. So for anyone who is 65 years or older, they just need to know that their tax rate cannot be increased above the amount paid in the first year after they turn 65, regardless of the change in tax rate or property value, unless they've made a significant improvement to their home. So this would not impact them in that way. So again, I said this earlier, but remember, for those of you who are going to go out and vote, you have to cast a vote in each one of these propositions separately, either for or against, and it is for a total of 777 and no increase to the tax rate. So a little bit about the schedule. We've been asked some questions like, how quickly will this happen? Well, we want to make sure that we're being very, again, fiscally responsible. So if the bonds were to pass, we would start immediately. We talked about inflation earlier, right? There are a lot of things that we would be able to start very, very quickly so that we could keep those escalation costs down, right? And just make better financial decisions. But you can see if the voters did approve the bond in May of 2024, summer of 2024, equipment purchases would begin and design work would begin on any new builds. System replacements and construction and renovations would go on from 24 to 29. And by the fall of 2029, the plan would be that all bond projects were either complete or underway. So are you registered to vote? If you don't know, you can scan the QR code, but the deadline to register is April 4th. And I don't see anybody scanning, so we're going to click that button right there. Early voting is April 22nd through April 30th, and Election Day is on May 4th. So where can you vote? Again, if you want to know where you can vote, you can scan that QR code, but I'm also going to give you a little more information about that in a second. So for more information, you could, again, scan this QR code and go to MansfieldISDbond.com. There you're going to have a detailed list of projects by campus and building throughout the district. If you are have questions about a specific building, what's going to happen there if the bond were to pass, you can see a list of what those projects would be by campus and by other buildings throughout our district. You could also go there and find out about the polling locations, voting dates and times, all of that. And we are also continuing to develop a frequently asked question section on that webpage. So we already have some questions on there, and as really great questions come in or a question we continue to hear with frequency, if you have it, somebody else probably has it too. We're adding that question and we're adding the answer. So that's there as well. And that's at MansfieldISDbond.com. And so hopefully I maybe answered some of your questions throughout this presentation, but we want to know what questions you guys have here, what questions you have at home. And so at this point, I would like to turn it over to two incredible people. The first one is Donald Williams. He's our Associate Superintendent for Communications and Marketing, and he is here to support the real star of the show, which is Hannah Lee, and she is going to help facilitate the questioning tonight. She is a senior at Lake Ridge High School, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Cantu, for allowing me to be a part of this important event. We have a lot of questions from our members of our MISD community, and so let's take one question from our audience, and I'll pass this over to Mr. Williams.
Thank you so very much. And at this time, we really want to be able to engage the audience here and online. And the questions are coming in great frequency, which is a great deal online, but we want to take our first question from the audience. So if you have a question, if you'll please kind of go ahead and raise your hand so we can just kind of see that. All right, we'll start right here. Say your name and what's your question.
My name is April Davis. You talked a lot about some of the projects that are coming up, but I have a huge passion and support for Ben Barber. You talked a little bit about expanding the CTE section. Can you kind of talk about what that means for that program?
Sure. So kind of reiterating, so we have, and maybe expanding a little bit, we have a high demand for a career tech, right, for a career tech. We have a real focus at Mansfield ISD on college, career, and life readiness. Really, I think at Ben Barber, not only do you get the career readiness, but we have kiddos from CTE classes that go on to college and then into career. So that space right there, there's a high demand for our kids, high demand for new programs, for expansion of programs, again, 1,000 kids. And so this would create some extra space for us to be able to, again, spaces to create more programs and to expand existing programs so that we can pour more kids and really take those requests and hopefully be able to honor as many of those as we can, hopefully all of them, but, But, again, we have great CTE teachers. We have great programming, and that demand is just going to continue. It's a great facility and great programs and great teachers. Thank you.
As a senior in high school and a person who loves numbers and is passionate about everything that pertains to people's finances, I wondered how this bond could pass without increasing the tax rate.
Well, let me see if I can go back to that one slide. Let me see. Well, that's not it. Well, it's going all kinds of crazy. Is somebody doing this for me? One more. There we go. Yes. So, again, with our business office and what they've been able to do and with the board voting to be able to do these things, we have been able to pay our debt down at a much faster rate than what we would necessarily be required to do. So when you look at that 36-cent tax rate, that's the tax rate that's set. And by doing all of those things, we've been able to create basically that white space that exists. If you were to take those light blue bars off, all that would be space where we are able to go out for that bond. So when you look at that blue bar and then you look at the existing bond debt, what the projected bond debt would be, you can see that always stays below that 36 cents. And staying below that 36 cents means we're not increasing the tax rate for our voters. That's how we're able to do it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to keep it going, and we're going to have a question in the audience. But before we take our next question for the audience, we're going to do one from Facebook. I think we have incredible teachers. Why can we not utilize the money from the bond to be able to give teachers a raise?
I can answer that one. Believe me, I wish that was possible, but we cannot. We're not allowed to take any money. Teachers' salaries and raises are located in that M&O bucket that we talked about, and you are legally not allowed to take money from the INS side and use that for anything related to salaries.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
At this time, we're going to take another question from the audience. We're going to try that side over there. Question?
Hi, my name is Jillian Counts, and I have a quick question. So I know that you mentioned 5 different propositions, and so just curious, what if like one or multiple propositions do not pass, but the others do? Would we be able to shift the funds for that?
Really good question. So if we have 5 propositions, if one of them does not pass, we cannot shift the money, right? And so as we think about those things, if 3 of the 5, those 2 that don't pass, those things just do not happen, right? Or we would have to take, we could potentially for some of those things, like for instance, if there was something like buses, right? Let's say hypothetically if Prop A didn't pass, HVAC still needs to be replaced, buses still need to roll down and they need to be safe, right? And so we would end up having to pay for some of those things out of the M&O side of the house, right? Great question.
Okay, so for those of us that may be 65, I want to stress
you.
that may
Not
be
you.
65. Yeah,
Right.
I just want to be sure that we understand how this is or is not going to impact our taxes.
Right. So it's not going to impact your taxes, well, because it's not going to be an increase to the tax rate, but even more specifically, if you're 65 or older, if you filed, right, for that homestead exemption tax rate for 65 and older at the tax office, if you haven't, then you need to contact your county tax office, and you can go ahead and file for that. But if you file for that and there's no major overhaul improvement to your home, then your tax rate's not going to change. Yep.
Hello, my name is Elena Fernandez, and my question is, why weren't the second floors of the max finished with the 2017 bond?
Mr. Brogdon, I think you have quite a bit of history related to that.
Absolutely, and thank you for asking that question. So in the 2017 bond program, the committee did elect to build some multi-purpose athletic buildings at all 5 of our traditional high schools. When we got down to the design, which the design committee included all of our head coaches and head trainers of MISD. And so with any bond program, we had a fixed budget for each one of those buildings. Well, the design team, including those coaches, we listed all of the needs, everything that we really needed in those buildings. And to accomplish all of those needs, we had to expand the footprint of those buildings. And so by expanding the footprint of those buildings, we had to take something and create a shell space to be able to afford it within the money that was allocated. So simply put, the coaches picked all of the things that they thought were the highest priority, and we included those on the first floor, and then we decided to have a phased approach for these buildings. And so the second floor was a shell space. The great news about the second floor is we already put the air conditioning in, we put the plumbing in, we put the electrical in. So now all we need to do is go back and retrofit all of those with the things that need to be included on the second floor. And the coaches have already determined what's important there. And on the second floor, what you'll see are lockers and showers and coaches' offices to complete that building. And while I'm talking about it, we talk about a master plan for it. Dr. Cantu told you about phase 3. Well, phase 3 of that building is part of the master plan, and that would be building on the building an indoor training facility. And the whole building is planned for phase 2 and phase 3. But the buildings were built exactly as they were designed and exactly as they were presented to the school board on January 2018.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for that response. At this time, we're going to take another question from, before we get to the audience, we're going to take another question from our Facebook friends. Why are we allocating so much money in the bond for fine arts?
So what I would say is extracurricular activities are so critically important to students' academic success, right? So you do see things for fine arts, you do see things for athletics on here. During Vision 2020, one of our guiding statements at that time was that students would participate in extra and co-curricular activities. So that participation, that was one of our guiding statements because we knew that the research shows that if you participate in an extra or co-curricular activity, you are more engaged in school. Therefore, you will be more successful in school academically, right? And so when Vision 2030 came about, we didn't maintain that as a guiding statement because now it's just the way we operate, right? We've been very intentional about building and increasing opportunities for our kids through fine arts programming and fine arts academies to get them involved from a young level on up so that we can increase that participation and that engagement in what's going on in school and in the classroom. And so I think having some focus on fine arts within this really supports Vision 2030 and the academic engagement of our kids.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, Joel Bogar here. I think it's a great success story that the fiscal responsibility of the district has put us in this position to be able to do so much for our students. Question is, if the bond does not pass, does that mean that taxes will go down for the members of the community?
Do you want to talk about yes, because that is some board work.
So the board actually sets INS tax rate for those that wonder where that comes from. And we do actually set that, and no, we don't expect it to go down following the bond. However, reverting back to a lot of what Dr. Cantu just presented to everyone and we've seen in the presentation, the district has been so fiscally responsible that they have done an amazing job at aggressively paying down our debt. And therefore, it has saved us a ton in speaking in interest savings, especially in cost savings. So we fully expect that our business office will continue that great practice and continue to save the district money. So,
Thank you. Let's take a question on this side. Okay, we're going to come right here.
Hi, my name is Zachary Sipe, and I had a question about the project timelines. I know that there's a lot of different projects to coordinate, but if these projects are approved, what is the timeline for completion?
So I know that there's been a lot of thought. There are some of these things, like the purchasing of buses, that could happen very, very quickly, right? Also, the planning and design of buildings can happen very, very quickly. Mr. Brogdon, do you want to, I mean, this is kind of in your bag, but is there anything you would add to that? I mean, will we get started as quickly as possible? Absolutely, because again, we want to keep those escalation costs down, and that we'll be able to, again, start on some things very, very quickly, either through purchasing of buses or starting design phases of buildings.
Purchasing technology. Technology would be something, there's some long lag times right now in technology, so we would definitely jump on that. Some good news, there are some things that are partially designed, like I mentioned, phase 2 of the athletic building, so that's something that we would want to get out of the gate as fast as possible. But the idea is to get as much moving as we possibly can so that we can save the taxpayers the inflation and escalation on the back end of these projects. So we'll be very, very aggressive.
Thank you.
Any questions from this side at all? Okay.
Hello, Christina Wilson. What propositions would benefit our special ed students?
Right. So going back to Proposition A, there is a ton of, well, there's something really in every proposition that's going to impact our special ed students. But when we think specifically about Prop A and we talk about the Early Learners Academy, again, for threes, that's for our early childhood special education students. So that's going to be something that directly is going to impact them. But then all the other things, I mean, hitting every single one of our buildings, we have special ed students throughout our district, right? And so all of those life cycle replacements, anything related to fine arts, you know, our special ed students participate in fine arts. They participate in athletics, right? So all of those things also benefit our kids. The instructional technology, being able to push that in, right? So our students have access to that. So I think there's in every proposition, there's something that is of benefit to our students in special education. Thank you.
All right, question right here. State your name and your question.
Brian McFadden, and thank you for the presentation. It was very clear to what could be a complicated subject. I'm a registered voter here in Mansfield. I'm not 65 quite yet, but my kids are grown and don't live in the district. How does the bond affect me and others like me?
Right. So I think what's so great about Mansfield ISD is so engaged in the community, and the community is so engaged in Mansfield ISD. So number one, it's beneficial in that it's not going to increase your tax rate. So that's, you know, if it passes, that would be a positive. There's no concerns related to that. But then being able to, as a community member, come out and engage with Mansfield ISD, right? From our Toys for Tots to all the events that we hold here, our fine arts. I mean, the expansion of our fine arts, I mean, all the opportunities. You can come to this Center for Performing Arts as a community member, and you can catch some really great shows, some really great choir concerts, band concerts. I think there's just something in here for everyone. And, you know, it's giving back. It's that sort of reciprocal community school district relationship that I think we support one another. Thank you.
All right, we have another question right here.
And more of a comment to elaborate on that. So my name is Crystal Brown. I work at a local business in this area, and we benefit directly from these students that graduate from Mansfield ISD. So they come, they work at the hospital. I'm at Methodist Mansfield. They work at the hospital, and because of your CTE program, they're coming fresh out, and they're our phlebotomists, lab techs, all the things. So for me personally as a business, that is how, even if you don't have children, when you come to the hospital, you want qualified people taking care of you, and these kids are coming out qualified.
Thank you for that.
All right, we're going to take another question from one of our Facebook friends. Will any of the bond provided be used towards the elementary schools?
Yes, it will. So there is all of the life cycle replacements. I mean, again, you can go on to the website and you can look at every single elementary school, and you can see what's going to happen at that school. whether it's civil work that's happening, pavement, those sorts of things, to HVAC, all those sorts of things are going to be impacted, and they're going to roll through in stages at each one of our elementary campuses.
All right, thank you. Additional questions in the room?
Sure, I have a question. My name is Stephanie Baird. So I noticed that a lot of renovations are going to happen with R.L. Anderson, and that is a very old stadium. So I personally have not attended any events there or done anything there, so I'm not really aware of all the things that happen out there. What would be the benefit of renovating such an old stadium?
Right. So number one, it's our historic stadium, but secondly, we have 5 comprehensive high schools in Mansfield ISD. So we have games going on, football games, other games going on constantly, and because we have 5 high schools, we have to utilize both facilities all the time, right, in order just to get our games in. And so renovating that not only so that we are not playing football 3 nights a week, right, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, right, so being able to utilize that so we have 2 solid stadiums. And then also, our community likes to come out and partake in either Vernon Newsom or RLA. So getting that up to speed so that it's a wonderful experience when our community partners come in and utilize that as well. Thank you.
All right, any questions on the other side of the room?
My name is Kendra Hopkins. We have a former Summit High School student, and we have one at Frontier and one at Summit as well. I'd love to see all the fine arts money that's being put into this bond. Huge benefit for our students. And I love to hear you recommend people to come here and hear the bands, hear the choirs, and see the theater productions. I'm not seeing any details specifically about kind of pulling some of our theater arts and increasing. How do I word that? Bring some of the theaters up to speed. I actually talked to one of our theater directors and learned that Dallas-Fort Worth is starting to become a hub for a lot of theater arts, and it would be a great benefit for our students as well.
No, I agree. And I think when we think about this fine arts edition, that space that we talked about, I think there's going to be some opportunity right there for also some expansion and for our kids, our theater kids, to be able to utilize that. But thank you for that. I appreciate the comment.
Additional questions in the room?
My name is Jennifer Karika, and I have 4 children that have come through the district. We have ridden buses before, and you've mentioned them several times this evening. You've talked about we could need upwards of 100 buses replaced. Could you elaborate on why that hasn't incrementally been done instead of one lump purchase?
Sure. So when we think about the purchasing of those buses, we're talking about buses that are going to end their life cycle, not all 100 at the same time, but it's about planning ahead, right? 2 years, some more are going to be at the end of their life cycle. The year after that, another. Am I saying that accurately, Jeffrey? Right? So it's going to happen like that. We have been purchasing as much as we can right now out of the M&O side. So when we have the opportunity, we have purchased some buses, but we've used that M&O side of the house to be able to do that. But it's getting difficult to keep up with the pace that they're ending their life cycle, right? And so this is about that future planning, being able to replace what we need to replace immediately, and then being able to keep on that replacement cycle with frequency so that we can get right back up to speed. Thank you.
All right, great question. We're still kind of fielding questions from a Facebook standpoint. Any additional questions in the room?
I actually have a question. As a person who's taken AP courses and also like Ben Barber business classes, I wondered how this bond, with the improved technology and the renovations can, enhance college readiness and, career readiness. Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of that, the CT expansion, I think that's going to be huge for that, right? And just improving the overall experience that our students have here. When we think about college and career readiness, a lot of the readiness of that comes from being life ready too. So we think about life ready skills. We get a lot of life ready skills through our extracurriculars, right? We learn leadership, we learn work ethic, we learn how to work as a team. So I think when we think about those parts of the bond too, right, I think that's also enhancing that college and career because those life ready lessons are inherent within those things. And then just those upgrades to technology, being able to put more current technology in the hands of y'all, and then not having that connectivity break, right, that stops the learning. So I think all those things are a part of improving that and helping that.
Great, thanks.
We have another question from Facebook. What is going to be one of the first things that we're going to do if the bonds are approved?
We are going to get together and we are going to plan immediately. We're going to immediately start purchasing those things that we're able to purchase, like Mr. Brogdon mentioned, the technology, the buses, and we'll immediately go into the planning phase as well for some of the new builds, if were they to pass.
Definitely jump on the,
Mike.
Well, you can say it for me. Definitely jump on the design portion of the renovations and the new construction. The design takes a little while to work through that process, as well as getting everything permitted through the city. So those would be some of the first things that we would focus on.
I think also, can you kind of speak to a little bit, when you talk in terms of the approval process, we get an actual yes. Would you talk a little bit about the selling of the bonds and what may take place there?
Michelle Trump.
We're
going to tap in our friend.
I'm going to the bullpen.
Hello. So here's what we'll do is if the bond is approved in May of 2024, and then we call it with the board May 14th on the election too, and canvass that as well. And then we'll take the bonds, what we call, to the market, and they go up for sale. And when we do that, that's usually around late June, July, and sometimes August. We're going to be watching the market and trends and how that works. And we're going to do the best bang for our buck. And our financial advisors and our underwriters, they know exactly when the best time to take it to the market. We're watching that. And then we're going to go to the market, and then the bonds people are going to buy them. Then the funds will be sent into the district so that we can start our projects ASAP. So we have two things to keep in mind: the best bang for our buck and timing of the funds that we got to get going. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Brogdon. So another fact that we have to do, we don't take all of 700, whatever propositions pass, they don't get taken to sold all at once, where we take the funds all at once, okay? And there's a reason for that, because number one, because people say, well, why don't you take the money and earn a lot of interest on that? Well, we have to pay interest on it as well. But at the same time, we have to space them out to make our capacity right there, that blue line. You notice there were some other lines in there that were creeping up on that, and there's a reason for that. So we won't take it all. It'll be like 200 million, 200 million, 200 million. And that also works well with phasing out how he does his projects too.
Good job.
Hey, thank you so very much for that. And as it's going to be drawing to a close, we have another question from our Facebook friends, but in the room, it'll give you an opportunity to think in terms of whether or not you have any additional questions. And I think this is a really important question that's going to come into us. Why does it say a tax increase from a ballot language standpoint if there is no tax increase?
So that's an interesting question. So in 2019, legislation was passed that stated that language has to go on the ballot, whether it's an increase or not. It's sort of as I think a warning's maybe not the right term, but it's sort of to draw attention to the voter for them just to think about it. But for us, we know we can do this without increasing the tax rate for our voters. But state law requires it.
So it's by statute?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
So before I toss it back to Dr. Cantu, are there any additional questions actually in the room?
Hi, Mary Ann Knight. I'd like to, piggybacking on the theater arts comment on fine arts for Prop D, I absolutely would like to emphasize that theater arts is growing, and we have a wonderful program. The musicals this spring, my daughter's campus, they were sold out every single day. And, I can't emphasize enough that we need more space. It would be great to grow that program, and we have wonderful directors. But just a few more questions on that multipurpose addition for fine arts. Does that mean that these groups that are listed, does that mean it will allow them to practice inside, indoors, instead of outside in the parking lot in the heat of the sun in the summer and in other inclement weather? Is that part of what's included in this?
That's part, that is part of intentional use for those groups to be able to go into that space. And that same space when we talked about Prop E, right? That's also an additional space for bands and things like that to be able to go into an indoor space for practice. Yes, thank you. So are we?
That's any other questions in the room?
Thank you, Ms. Knight.
Okay, at this time, Dr. Cantu, I'm going to turn it back over to you for closing comments.
Well, my closing comment is, number one, I want to thank everyone in here and online for joining us. Hopefully it was informative and you have a better understanding of the bond election that's been called on for May 4th of 2024. And I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Ms. Hannah Lee. And I know she's trying to sit down back there and you can't see that if you're online, but thank you so much. You're already doing incredible things, but I can't wait to see what you do after you graduate and leave us at the end of this year. So we really appreciate you coming out and helping facilitate the conversation. So anyway, I want to thank our panelists as well. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Brogdon. And thank you, Ms. Trongard, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Williams, and your team for putting this all together. And so we are still going out and doing a ton of presentations. So if you know someone who would like to have information, they're all listed on our website. Please encourage someone to either go to our website to get information or encourage them to come on out to any of our remaining presentations. We would love to give you all the facts about the bond. And so with that, I will say thank you so much. I hope you guys stay dry going home and have a great night.